Well, hey there, everyone. I hope you're all doing good. It is me, Kevin O'Shea, the host of the Just Japan podcast. Hisa Shibidi. Just wanted to let you know that there will be a new episode of the Just Japan podcast coming soon. But until then, here's something else that you can listen to. I've got a brand new podcast called Tales from Kevin. It's a storytelling podcast featuring me. I don't have guests. It's me sharing my stories, my ideas, my thoughts. It's a storytelling podcast. And my first episode just came out a few days ago. It's a pretty good one. It's a story about a monkey. Well, you'll hear. You'll hear very soon. So I'm adding that episode right here. So just keep on listening and you can hear episode number 1 of the Tales from Kevin podcast. Tale 1. I got a monkey golden shower. And if you like this podcast, I'm sure you will. The links are in the show notes below. Go follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Amazon Music, all the places you follow podcasts. Links are below for the Tales from Kevin podcast. So enjoy the first episode of the new show, and I hope you join me and you subscribe and follow the new show. I'd really appreciate that. All right, sit back and enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of the Tales from Kevin podcast. That's right, it's a brand new podcast. My name is Kevin O'Shea, and I want to thank you for taking the time to stop by here to download this podcast, taking the time to listen. Yeah, just thank you so much. Welcome. We've got a new thing going on here. So, if you know me, you know me. If you don't, I'll tell you who I am. My name is Kevin O'Shea, and I'm a Canadian, and I am currently based in Malaysia, Penang, Malaysia. And I have spent the last 22 years living in Asia. I've lived in South Korea, I've lived in Japan, China, now Malaysia. I'm just beginning my second year in Malaysia, and yeah, here I am. I'm on the island of Penang. And if you're not familiar with that, I know I wasn't before I came here. Penang is a beautiful small island situated on the northwest coast of Malaysia, just a little bit below Thailand. It's got a really historic and beautiful city called Georgetown, which was a part of the kind of British colonial era at one point. A lot of British architecture, a lot of British influence, but it's a pretty neat place in so many ways. Penang's a pretty multicultural place, as is most of Malaysia. Here in Penang, there's three distinct ethnic groups. There is the Malay ethnic group, Chinese, which speak their own dialect of Chinese called Hokkien, and of course the Indian or Hindu population. So there's always a lot of exciting things happening here in Penang. Lots of festivals, always so many incredible festivals. Lots of holidays, which is always fantastic. So here I am. I'm a Canadian. I'm living here. I'm working here with my family. Why am I here? Well, I'm an international school teacher, and my work takes me around the world, but mostly Asia. That's where I've spent my entire career. So I suppose it doesn't take me all the way around the world. It just takes me around Asia. So here we are. And this is the first episode of a podcast where I'm going to be sharing stories, thoughts, ideas about my life, things I'm interested in, things I think about. From time to time, I might get someone on to chat with me, but not so much in an interview format. More of just kind of sitting around and having conversations. Now, if you do know me, and again, if you don't know me, I am the host of the Just Japan podcast and the Nature Talks podcast. The Just Japan podcast is a more edited, kind of polished type of interview podcast where each week I would bring on different guests to talk about an aspect of life in Japan. And if you're wondering why Japan, well, I lived in Japan for about 10 years. I left my heart in Japan. I really love Japan a lot. It's a fantastic place. My wife is from Japan. She's from Osaka. I've got 2 kids who were born in Kobe, Japan. And here we all are traveling around as a family now. We've been outside of Japan for quite some time. We left Japan back in 2017 and moved to Beijing, China, and then Shenzhen, China. And Shenzhen is near Hong Kong. And then we ended up here in Malaysia. And we ended up here in Malaysia because we had lived through a lot of the COVID lockdowns in China and just had fatigue. Kind of we called it the COVID lockdown fatigue. A lot of expats living in China, of course, suffered that. And we just needed somewhere fresh and new. I knew a few people who had come to this school, the International School of Penang, and where I'm at now. So I contacted them, and one thing led to another, and I moved here with my family. So here we are, guys. And the reason why I've decided to create this podcast is because I'm going to be honest, I was having a bit of an identity crisis with my other podcasting endeavors. I just wasn't feeling the mojo anymore. I had created the Just Japan podcast while I was living in Japan. Kind of earlier days of podcasting. I definitely was not a trailblazer by any means, but it was, more than 10 years ago. So at that time, it took a certain level of technical prowess to be able to kind of pull off podcasting, plus all of the work that goes behind being a host, a producer, a guest liner-upper, all of that stuff. And so I was very consistent with the Just Japan podcast, and I put out about 200 episodes over the course of a couple of 3 or 4 years. And it was great. And then I left and moved to China and lost the Japan podcasting mojo. I basically kind of stopped podcasting. Did some education stuff here from time to time, dabbled in it. But that was it. And then I brought back the Just Japan podcast last fall. And a lot of people were very happy. And, quite a few people have been listening. But I'm just not feeling it. I think it's a crowded landscape now. And I kind of, you lose the mojo. And so I'm not finishing that podcast. I plan to continue it, but maybe not with the frequency. And I have been putting out episodes. I'm thinking maybe once a month or so. But one thing I've always wanted, I talk about often, and I think about it often, is just kind of sharing ideas, stories, my thoughts. But storytelling is such an important thing to me. I love telling stories. I love listening to good stories. I love listening to storytelling podcasts. A few years back, I was teaching at a school in Shenzhen, China. And if you don't know Shenzhen, there's another place I didn't know either. That's right across the border from Hong Kong. So it's in the mainland side of Hong Kong. And it was basically, when Hong Kong was still under British rule, Shenzhen was kind of the Chinese, the CCP's answer to making a special economic zone to compete with Hong Kong. And, and when I lived there, you can see Hong Kong territory, I could see it from my balcony. It's right there. And when I was teaching there, before COVID, we had a professional storyteller visited our school. His name was Brian Ellis Fox, and he was known as Mr. Fox. And he came into our multi-purpose hall and did this incredible performance, kind of telling stories and performing at the same time for our students in early primary. And it was amazing. It was electric. Now, he did performances throughout the day, adjusting them to each kind of child demographic that came into the multipurpose room. And he told, it was like jokes and stories and folklore and music. And he had kids up moving, and he was so engaging. It was really incredible. And again, a professional storyteller. And this man would travel around the world doing folk festivals, visiting schools, post-secondary institutes, and all kinds of things doing this. And I was really intrigued by that performance. And that would have been back in, early fall of 2019. And, since then, of course, even before then, there were other storytellers I was really fascinated with. Of course, I really always enjoyed, as a Canadian, Stuart McLean from the Vinyl Cafe radio show on CBC Radio. the late great Stuart McLean. And yeah, I just love this kind of thing. So this will be a podcast where I do share stories and, maybe share the stories of others in a very informal way. So this podcast, it was also, I put out a kind of call to arms on my social media, a call to questions, a call to answers, a call for answers. I guess that's what it would be. And I kind of explained my dilemma to my podcast listeners and explained how I wasn't feeling the mojo anymore. What should I do? I want a podcast. I love podcasting. I love, talking to audience members out there. I love talking to people and meeting people and making, building a network, building community. I love doing that. So my friend Kurt Bell, known on Twitter and on YouTube as Softy Papa, encouraged me to make this podcast. But he wasn't the only one. There have been other people. A good friend of mine, PJ, who I've done a lot of social media projects with over the years, podcasting. He was a frequent guest on the Just Japan podcast. Often said, Kevin, the people come to listen to you. They like your guests, but they come for you, Kevin. And Kurt said something very similar to that recently as well. So here we are. Here I am. Here you are. Here we are together, holding hands across a microphone and across a pair of earbuds, wherever you are. I'm holding your ears. So here I am in Malaysia, and it is my second year here, and I will let you all know, of course, now, on this first episode, this will be our second and final year here in Malaysia. My family and I have made the decision to move on. I have already informed the administration team at my school that this will be my final year here. Malaysia has been a fantastic place to be, but it is not a long-term place for my family and I for a lot of reasons. Mostly financial, taxes are pretty high here in Malaysia. Taxes are high, and if you're an expat, if you're a foreigner living here, taxes can be especially tricky, high, and challenging, especially with the current government, who seems to be kind of favoring very wealthy expats, while other expats maybe, they find it more challenging. Because of my wife's visa status, she cannot work, so we have one income and high taxes. And you know what? Malaysia is not as cheap as it once was, and as people say, it's a relatively pricey place. And I would compare it, and my wife agrees. We would compare living here in Malaysia, in Penang, Malaysia, to living in, say, Kobe, Japan, where we were based for 10 years. Similar food prices, similar rent prices, similar transportation prices. It's a relatively expensive place to live. And if you're being taxed up the yin-yang, so it makes sense for us to move on. But, Malaysia is a beautiful place. It's a fantastic place. The people are incredible. They're so friendly. Oh my gosh, the people here are friendly. They're always smiling. They're always nodding. You get a million smiles a day when you walk down the road here. Now, we live on Penang Island, which is primarily known for its tourism. It is a huge tourism spot. Excuse me while I take a slug of Coke Zero, some flat Coke Zero. My drink of choice these days. Not the flat part, but Coke Zero. So Penang is a tourist hotbed. And I live in an area called Batu Ferringhi, which is famous for Batu Ferringhi Beach, which is a very gorgeous beach that unfortunately is often filled with trash. But I've seen worse, I suppose. And it is, it's got the most gorgeous sunsets. Oh my gosh, the sunsets here are unbelievable. And if you follow me on any of my social media, which you all should, I'll talk about it more later if you're new to the podcast, go follow me on Twitter at MadForMaple. Go follow me on Instagram at JLandKev. Follow me in those places. And you'll see sometimes photos I share of Batu Ferringhi Beach sunsets, and they're pretty breathtaking. So people come here from all over to see these sunsets, and I really get it. Unfortunately, the infrastructure is pretty poor here on the island, and the road system is very poor. And there's really only one road into Batu Ferringhi and one road out, and it's a 2-lane windy road along the coast, where you've got big hills on one side, coast on the other, And your phone doesn't even work when you're in a cab. You can't even use your 4G or 5G. You just get that. If you use an iPhone, you get the little E symbol for error. It's pretty remarkable. You don't see that very often in 2024 in various places around the world. So we're living here, and it's a place where there's resorts. There's a Hard Rock Hotel. The Shangri-La has a couple of hotels along this area, a lot of beautiful resorts, and there's one kind of main strip where there are tourist shops and lots of tourists walking around, lots of tourists from the Middle East, from mainland China, from Europe, from Australia, New Zealand. And there's a lot of wildlife, and the wildlife sometimes interacts and intermingles with the tourists, the locals, in many interesting ways. A lot of giant monitor lizards all over the place, and they're fantastic. I love a great monitor lizard. I love a good monitor lizard. I think they're adorable and neat. They're massive. They can get huge. I've seen commonly ones that are 2 meters long from nose, from snout to tail. And then you see everything in between, tiny ones, middle-sized ones. And they are definitely more frightened of us than we are of them. When even a giant monitor lizard sees you, it tries to get away as fast as it can, even though that thing could jack you up. A giant monitor lizard can mess you up, but they are too afraid to try. They get away, which I suppose works for us. There's a lot of snakes around here. There's a lot of venomous snakes that could jack you up as well, and they're not afraid of you, so we got to be really careful, especially when you go into trails in the forest. It's often recommended that you don't wear shorts, and you definitely do not wear open-toed shoes. Vipers galore. But what I want to talk about right now, I want to share with you guys in this first episode of the Tales from Kevin podcast is a little story about getting tinkled on, pee-peed on. I teach early primary. These are terms I use. Being at the receiving end of a golden shower by an endangered monkey. So here on the island of Penang, there are two major groups of monkeys, and monkeys are common, and you see them every day. You interact with them almost every day. I live about a 10-minute walk away from where I work, and every day during that 10-minute walk, I see, especially in the afternoons, a lot of monkeys. And I'm not being metaphorical here at all. I literally just mean monkeys. There are the long-tailed macaques and the dusky leaf monkeys, otherwise known as dusky langurs. Two groups of monkeys. One I love, one I hate. Definite love-hate relationship. One most people love, one most people hate. Most people love the dusky leaf monkeys. They are adorable dark brown monkeys with white circles around their eyes and their mouth. And they're herbivorous, and they essentially I'm forgetting the word now. There's a word for like animals that only eat leaves. What do they call those? I'm not sure. But they basically only eat leaves, and that's it. They don't eat people food. They don't eat garbage. They don't do that stuff. They stay up on the trees and they just eat leaves. And that's it, which is cool. And it's driving me crazy because I was in a workshop with some conservationists a little while ago, and it's not herbivorous. They're not herbivores. I mean, they are, but there's a specific term for animals that only eat leaves. I can't think of it. If you guys find out, let me know. I don't want to sit here Googling right now because I record this in one shot, and I don't want to stop the flow, even though I'm stopping it now in a way. But yeah, so the dusky leaf monkeys, the dusky langurs are adorable. Go Google them, dusky leaf monkey. They're so cute. And yeah, they're a fan favorite. They even show up on our school campus and sit in the trees when the students are there, and they eat leaves. Unfortunately, they do poop a lot, so sometimes our students step in that, and you got to be careful. And they are a wild animal, so like we can't walk up and hug them or anything like that, But they're pretty passive, and they don't care about the people very much. They just want to eat their leaves, and that's all. Now, the long-tailed macaques, they're aggressive. They come down to the roadways. A lot of people feed them. They've been acclimated to getting food from people, so they expect people to feed them, so they can be aggressive. They'll try to sometimes steal your bags and stuff, assuming you have food in them. They've got big teeth. They're nasty creatures. But this story is going to be about the cute ones. Now, I was here this summer. I didn't have the opportunity. I wasn't in a financial position to travel back home to Canada or to Japan this summer with my family. Another reason why we're moving on. But we weren't in that financial position, so we stayed here in Penang, which in many regards was a lovely summer. It's a beautiful place to be. It's a resort island where people from all around the world spend thousands of dollars to come to on their vacations, so not a bad place to be stuck, right? So I would go for walks every day, walk a lot of steps, try to walk about 20,000 steps a day, if not more. And often in my walks, I see monkeys foraging in the trees. Now, there's a large 4-lane road that is in front of my apartment building, and it kind of cuts. My apartment building's kind of at the end of a road, and it was a housing development that was cut through the jungle, unfortunately, right in the middle of the monkeys' habitat and traditional kind of breeding grounds and foraging grounds. So this is monkey territory. So I'm walking home one day from a local shop. I went to a Family Mart. We have the Japanese company Family Mart is here. There's a lovely little Family Mart not far from where I live. And I'm coming home one early afternoon from the Family Mart, and I'm walking up this hill on this beautiful tree-lined 4-lane road. And there's no traffic around. It's very slow, very quiet in the summertime. Most of the residents in the community are gone in the summer. They're just here for the international school year. And once the school year is done, they go back to their home countries with their children, the families, and enjoy their summers at home. And then they come back for the school year. So I see a lot of movement up in the tree canopy up above, and there's some really tall trees. And the branches kind of span across the road. And I can see dusky leaf monkeys are jumping from one side of the road to the next, high above. And it's always heart-stopping to watch this. And I always wonder, what happens if they miss? Well, if they miss, they go splat. And that does happen to the monkeys. Sometimes they do have tragic fates where they'll be high up in the tree canopy, leaping from tree to tree, and they miss, or they make a misjudgment, or they jump from one tree to the next, and they catch a branch, and the branch breaks, and boom, that's it. Now, I've never seen one die from this kind of thing, but I've seen them jump and miss and make miraculous recoveries. I've seen them jump onto branches. The branches break and crack. The monkeys scream and make a miraculous recovery. So they're jumping across, and I'm kind of stopped, and I'm looking up in awe, and I've got my earbuds in, and I'm listening to some kind of podcast. I think probably the Blind Boy podcast, which is one I've been really getting into over the course of the summer. Fantastic storytelling type of podcast. The amazing host from Limerick, Ireland. And I'm wearing a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and I'm wearing a pair of blue wraparound sunglasses, the kind runners would wear, because sometimes I pretend I'm a runner. I'm more of a kind of slow staggerer, but I pretend to be a runner. So I'm wearing my wraparound sunglasses. Oh, thankfully I'm wearing those wraparound sunglasses. I'm looking up almost directly above me, and I notice there is a cute monkey sitting right up above me, and his long brown tail, this dusky leaf monkey, his long brown tail is hanging down, and he doesn't see me. He's probably 30 feet up, 10 meters, maybe a bit higher, maybe 12, 13 meters above me. And I see the tail hanging down, and that monkey's up there eating leaves, and he's sitting up there, and I can see his butt and his tail. And as I'm looking up, all of a sudden, a bunch of wet stuff hits me in the face. Warm wetness directly on my eyes. Bang. Luckily, I'm wearing wraparound sunglasses. And the liquid hits my eyes, my sunglasses, and my face, and I can feel it hit my hair, and I can see it blotching on my shirt, and my shirt getting wet. And it's a beautiful sunny day. The skies are blue, 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 incredible shades of blue. There's no clouds up above, and I'm looking up at that monkey, and there's no clouds above him, and it's just a blue sky up above him, and through the tree canopy you can see. It's not raining. Not raining the kind of, traditional precipitation we're used to anyway. And then I look down, I'm holding my iPhone 14 in my hand, and on the screen of my iPhone is a yellowish, thick, viscous kind of liquid. And I realized that's what had hit me in the face. And there's only one explanation. I'm standing directly underneath a monkey, and a thick, warm, viscous yellow liquid has just showered upon me. I realized he just whizzed all over me, and he just sits there continuing to eat his leaves, and there's no one around. I don't scream. I'm in shock, kind of disbelief. Like, did this just happen to me? And it did. I was absolutely assaulted by a dusky leaf monkey Now, guys, when you Google a picture of these dusky leaf monkeys, you'll see how cute they are. And I said, oh, this is so gross. This is just what happened to me. So, of course, my initial reaction is to pull up my phone, and I wiped it off of my shirt. And I sent my wife a quick message on Line. And Line is the instant messaging app of choice for Japanese folks. So I do use it to connect with my wife and other friends in Japan. I use WhatsApp for most other things. WeChat for my friends in China. And I said, hey, a monkey peed on me. And she laughed. And I said, no, really, it did. And I walked home, luckily only about a 10-minute walk home. And it wasn't really even a walk of shame. I just walked home. I got in the house, told my wife and kids what happened, immediately took off my clothes and went to the shower and had a shower, shampooed up and washed myself thoroughly with soap. And that was it. The clothes were laundered, I was laundered, and everything was better. Now, has my relationship with these monkeys changed? Nah. I still love them. I think they're fantastic. They're endangered species, mostly due to habitat loss and habitat fragmentation because of us people, So I don't know if it was actively making a statement, that it was feeling the pressure of people and unhappy with people, and that's how it was fighting back against me, or maybe I was just standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think that's probably more the reality, standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I got weed on, tinkled on. I was a victim of a monkey golden shower here in Penang, Malaysia, guys. Yep. Life in Malaysia is an interesting thing, and there will be many more stories about life in Malaysia. I'll be sharing you tales of life in Canada and Japan and China and the rest of Asia. And I will also just talk about thoughts and ideas in future episodes. Yeah. So that's it for episode 1 of the Tales from Kevin podcast. I hope you liked it, everyone. Please give me a follow on Twitter. I would appreciate that if you are on Twitter. At Mad for Maple. That's me. I'm a Canadian. Love my maple. Follow me on Instagram at JLandKev. Please do that. And you can always check out my YouTube channel at Busan Kevin. I used to make a lot of videos. I do still occasionally. I make shorts. All summer long, I was putting up dad joke shorts. Yeah, that's really it. Of course, I do have another podcast called the Just to Japan podcast. And if you are coming over from the Just Japan podcast, I'm happy you did. Please share this little storytelling podcast around with your friends and your family. And if you think it's something they'd like, there's a lot more to come. That's it. The first episode of the Tales from Kevin podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be talking to you really soon.